Male vulnerability, or the vulnerability is strength message. First of all, vulnerability is literally a type of weakness. That's not an opinion. Vulnerability and weakness have been synonyms for hundreds of years. And people that say it means something else to them are simply showing they're incapable of rational thought. That's like saying 2 + 2 = 5 and demanding everyone agree with your math. So why do so many people parrot this vulnerability message for men? There's a lot to unpack here, but for starters, look around the world we live in today. Masculinity is under attack, has been under attack for decades now. Any objective observer can clearly see the goal of the feminist doctrine is a world with no traditional gender roles. People can argue about whether or not it's a sinister plot or just the direction of our crazy modern culture. But there's no way to deny that the mainstream establishment is working to end natural traditional gender roles. And it's called the war on masculinity and not the war on humanity because it's objectively masculine men that have to be removed from the equation in order for the plan to work. Of course, the natural roles of both men and women are under attack, but men are attacked directly because men are the protectors and providers. And not just for the women in their own lives, but of their immediate groups, and then from there, men protect their close-knit communities. Break down men as protectors and providers, and everything else crumbles. Now, there are a dozen or more avenues I could go down talking about the various aspects of this war on men, but we're focusing here on the vulnerable man message. And yes, vulnerability is literally a type of weakness. So, how is a man being weak by being vulnerable? First, consider that men and women are not the same. Men do not possess the same emotional spectrum as women. My favorite example to use is that of transgender men. That is, biological women who undergo the hormonal and surgical change to transition to being men. Trans healthcare providers have to counsel these trans men on how to adjust to their changes in their emotions once their testosterone reaches masculinizing levels. And they tell them plainly that not only are their bodies changing, but their brains are changing as well. That their emotions, as compared to when they were still fully women, their emotions will feel flattened or detached, and that they lose their ability to cry as easily as they once did. Why? Because they now have masculinizing levels of testosterone, and that high level of testosterone literally changes what they're capable of feeling and experiencing emotionally. So, men and women are different. The standard feminine emotional response is here. Let's call it a 5. And the standard masculine response to the same stimulus is here. We'll call it a 2. Doesn't matter what the exact stimulus is, something large or small, positive, negative, whatever. But this instance produces an emotional response in a couple, a husband and wife. Her response is more emotional than the man's. And remember that even trans men are told their emotions will feel flat as compared to before they got jacked full of testosterone. Men and women do not process emotions the same. So some big thing or small thing happens, the wife's emotional response will, in most instances, be stronger than the man's. She's here and he's down here. This is natural and why normal romantic relationships are complementary. It's the old idea of yin and yang, two puzzle pieces that fit together. It's not natural for a man to express the same level of emotions as does a woman. But men are told today, with actual research backing it up, that it's unhealthy for them to not express their emotions more, and that if they aren't more emotionally open, then they're suppressing their emotions. And that does sound unhealthy. However, the so-called research that identifies the typical male emotional response as unhealthy is simply comparing men to women. That is, the psychological establishment has determined that the female emotional response is the default healthy emotional response for all human beings. So if there's a sad movie and the woman cries at the end and the man doesn't, their reasoning is that the woman crying is healthy, but the man is suppressing his emotions. And he's suppressing his emotions because society programmed him that way, not because it's unnatural for a man to cry easily. And it is unnatural for a man to cry easily. So keep in mind the example of trans men and how they're plainly told they'll lose their ability to cry as they once did, and their emotions will feel flat as compared to when they were fully women. That's some truly sick Orwellian manipulation going on. Transgender men are given plain advice on how to be men, while biological men are told they're toxic because their emotions don't match a woman's emotions. Men are told their emotions are unhealthy when they don't have the same emotional response as a woman. And this is based on so-called research that arbitrarily makes the feminine response the baseline default for all human emotions. It's complete nonsense. So when a man makes himself vulnerable, he's amping up his own emotional response. He's expressing more emotions than he normally, naturally would. The woman's standard response level is 5. The man's natural response level is 2. But now he's trying to be a good man and a good husband, so he begins to vent a little and express himself more, and now he and the wife are both at 4 or 5. They're matching each other's emotions. This destroys the complementary nature of the relationship. They're no longer two puzzle pieces that should fit together, but are now two similar puzzle pieces that can't fit together. Imagine you're on a ship far out at sea, and it looks as if there are some storms on the horizon. You hope the captain of the ship has a plan and knows what he's doing. The captain's up on the bridge with binoculars scanning the horizon. He's not saying much, but he's observing, watching, making small adjustments to the ship as you sail along. When he speaks, it's to reassure you and the other passengers that, yes, there's a storm on the horizon, but measures are being taken and it'll be okay. That gives the passengers confidence and helps them feel safe and secure. Now, imagine the same scenario, but the captain is chatty and emotional. He's scanning the horizon, but now he's giving a constant rolling commentary on all the little things that could go wrong. He's wondering out loud if the engines will hold, if the rudder might be damaged, what if their compass setting is off even by a little bit, and on and on and on. You and the other passengers do not feel safe at this point. You're worried, and your stomach begins to feel the effects of the rolling waves as your nerves get raw with worry. Men and women have always formed complementary relationships because by our nature, men are more stoic and emotionally controlled, and women less so. That's the yin and yang, the feminine chaos and the masculine order. That's how it's supposed to work. Two puzzle pieces fitting together. But when a man is vulnerable, expressing himself more openly, and being more in touch with his feelings, he matches the feminine emotional response. This is the second scenario of the ship's captain who's constantly jabbering about all of his slightest concerns about what could go wrong in the storm. It lacks strength, it lacks confidence, and makes the passengers uneasy and afraid. The first scenario of the common cold ship's captain is the natural complementary relationship. The man has command of his emotions. He's confident, and by extension, his passengers can rest more easily knowing he's in control. The complementary relationship then is the man being emotionally available for the woman's emotions, not the man matching her emotions. That's chaos. But he listens to her, gives her room to express her emotions, and then, up to a point, he commiserates with her feelings. If she had a bad day at work, just listen and then commiserate with those feelings. That's the male version of being emotionally open, being emotionally available. The man is giving her emotional support just by listening, and when he commiserates with her feelings, he reassures her that he's on her side. He's there for her. He's solid. So the man is her rock. He's the confident captain of the ship. He makes the woman feel safe and secure precisely because he's making room for her more emotional nature. And he reassures her he's on her side. A man cannot be solid and be vulnerable at the same time. and anyone saying a man can be both is either a liar or simply ignorant. Now, a lot of men think that simply expressing any emotions at all as being vulnerable, but that's not vulnerable. That's normal. Think back to what I said about men and women having different levels of emotional response. When men think vulnerable means simply expressing some emotions, and then I point out that vulnerability is weakness, what they hear then is that I'm saying don't express any emotions at all, which isn't the case, of course. So here's the takeaway. Men should be emotionally open relative to their masculine nature. But being vulnerable is when a man is being emotionally open relative to a woman's feminine nature. That destroys the complementary nature of the relationship and thus ultimately weakens the relationship, which is the whole point of the feminist agenda. The vulnerable man is no longer the solid rock for his wife, but now they're 50-50 partners. No yin and yang, no complementary nature, just chaos. Break down men as protectors and providers, and everything else crumbles.